Well, today we have this pitch deck, and this founder is trying to raise 500K pre-seed. So important just to start off so that everybody knows sort of what round and what type of investment or size of funding that we are looking for. The company is MyDola,
I feel like it's Dala,
yeah, Dola,
but
something like
but
that.
we're out of domain names. I mean, that's really what this comes down to. I mean, we ran out of domain names a long time ago, and so you got to get creative, which I appreciate.
And as always, I'm going to start this off by plugging this deck into our investor matching here for everybody who's watching. Do this, just give it a shot and see what investors are matched to you. We've got like over 10,000 investors. Here are the fundraisers that we've been working on and have been showing. And this entire tool allows you to automate your outreach, connect you with the proper investor, track. It analyzes your pitch deck, and you can manually adjust your parameters, your emails. Very, very powerful. Been having a lot of fun with this. And I'm just looking at this. Will, I've uploaded the pitch deck.
Essentially, what we built was a tool that does all the investor matching for you. For any for those of you that have tried to do this manually by yourself, it is a nightmare. And the good news, you just don't have to do it by yourself anymore. So what this will do, this will take either your pitch deck, or you can just type in things like how much you're raising, what industry you're in, etc. Either way, it'll take all of the investors that are out there, and it'll rank based on your criteria which ones you should be talking to first. And I think a lot of people don't realize that they go out there like, oh, I just want to talk to investors, and all investors aren't the same. If there's 250,000 investors out there, the universe of who you should probably be talking to is 50 to 200. That's it. For a lot of people out there, they're out there pitching, they're talking like private equity, they're talking like venture capital and all this. And it's like those people don't even invest at your stage. Like you're talking to all the wrong people. Before you do anything, just you can do this for free. Just run this through your pitch deck or just throw in some criteria and get a good sense for who you should be talking to.
And the 100% match was an angel, which is perfect for
Yeah,
pre-seed rounds,
absolutely.
and searches through and figures out, okay, what stage are. Well, it's an interesting question, and I'm curious how you'd answer this. We were matching for a founder, and some really solid 100% match came up.
Yeah.
But as you dove a little deeper into the profile of the investor, it was a fund.
Yeah.
You saw that they were a little later stage than
Right.
the startup at the time. Is it worth reaching out to them anyway? How do you approach that in terms of gathering, okay, here are my targets, but when?
Yeah. So again, a lot of people don't realize that there are stages of investors. So think of it like school, where you have elementary school, you have middle school, you have high school, you have college, and there's different teachers and different curriculum for each of those stages. A lot of people are like, "Well, I just want to go straight to college. I don't want to bother with all." That's cool, but it actually just doesn't work that way.
Give me my
Those
PhD,
investors,
right?
yeah, exactly. Those investors are interested in you. They want to make sure you've gone through all of those other grades and gotten the requisite knowledge before you ever talk to them. So, sticking with that analogy, if you come out and you're like, "Hey, I'm raising pre-seed, which is elementary school, just to mean your first pass," and you're talking to all the wrong people at the PhD level, they're automatically going to say no because you're talking to the wrong people. Now, in this case, Ed, you're saying this is a later stage investor that pops up, even though you're looking at a pre-seed round to get started. I'd say, generally speaking, maybe wait till later. What you can do, though, which I've had good success with, is you can talk to these folks and say, "Hey, we're not at your stage yet, but we're giving you an idea of where we're at, and we'd love to see if there's any vehicles that you may have released since the last time we've looked that maybe are earlier stage, or some folks that you like to work with that are earlier stage that we could start talking to." The best intros you can get from other investors, and you always want to ask for them.
That's great advice. One way, and I'm going to double click on what you said, Will, is the approach. So what I'll do, and I've done to success in the past, is, hey, we are not at that stage yet, but we tick all the boxes, and I'm contacting you because I think this would be worth a future conversation. Would really love to know what you think. And I've actually got responses from people saying, thank you. Yes, you are early. We appreciate that you acknowledge that, but it's compelling, and we're going to keep tracking you and
Yeah.
see. And then the gold, Will, is they actually tell me when to contact them. Reach 500K
Yeah.
total run rate. It's beautiful. And investors like that because even they may refer you and they may say, you're not ready for us, but we work with a whole bunch of
Yep.
earlier stage funds. And then you started that relationship, and that feels good, Will, for any
Yeah.
founder.
Yeah, I agree. But generally speaking, we try to align you early with the people who are also in your stage so that you can have some of those conversations, but you're not having a ton of them.
A lot of investors say they're early stage, And then you contact them and they're like, you're too early. And the founder goes, they're incensed, right? Just you said on your website that you're early stage pre-revenue, all that stuff. And now you're telling me I'm too early. How do you interpret that?
Yeah, that what they're saying is no. And we're laughing because Ed and I have gotten this answer, right? Like I've been through this damn gauntlet so many times, and I'll be out there raising, and the investor will say, well, we love the product, we love you as a founder, right? But maybe come back to us when you hit $1 million in annual recurring revenue, and we'd be really interested in talking to you again. All that means is no. Ed, you and I were starting a firm. I would say, look, this is a shitty answer, but we have to give it because we never want to say to a founder, ever want to say to a founder, don't ever talk to us again.
Exactly.
Heaven forbid that founder becomes Sam Altman, right? And you're like, oh, this AI thing, I guess is going to have some legs, right? Like you never want to shut the door completely. I've seen some investors do it, right? I mean, you can get away with it to some degree, but it buys you nothing, right? Yes. It buys you nothing. In most cases, you just want to say, not interested right now. So that really kind response, come back to us whenever, just simply means no. And there are a lot of versions that sound really pleasant that are a hard no that founders have to learn to translate.
Rule of thumb, everyone, believe the no and accept it, but don't necessarily believe the why, but take everything else as a no. In other words, don't get all scrambled up and start to make pivots just because they said something you're too early, or don't take it personal. Don't spend any emotional energy on it. Investors will literally say anything to be polite. It's a hard pass. Just take it as that and keep moving on.
It's the same thing as doing a job interview, right? You go to the job interview because you want the job. And if the person on the other end, the person doing the interview is professional, they'll say, thank you so much for your time. What they're really saying is you just wasted my time. They'll say, we'll reach out to you, which means you'll never hear from us again. I mean, like they're pleasantries, but they don't translate into realities. And it's just kind of, it's a tough thing to understand and navigate in this environment.
Will, I'm just going to touch on this for this founder. Here, you can start to look at the reasons that some of these investors would be a good match. And then we won't get into it. Just want to spend a little bit of time on showing what is possible here. But everything is just click. It'll do the thing for you. And we're here to help you out. That's with any founder who's interested. We'll guide you through this, but it's so, I'm using the word idiot proof. Like I don't think founders can make a mistake.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, again, Ed and I have been doing this for decades. So this is us just being like, let's just take all the work off the table and get you to the point where you're just pitching instead of trying to track down investors and all that bullshit.
Let's take a look at the deck, Will.
Yeah.
My Dollar is a secure digital wallet that transforms community savings circles into modern financial product for diaspora communities. What do you think? First impression, cover page, everyone.
I have no idea what that means.
I don't.
Okay, that concerns me more. Now, I bet this statement is 100% true. Now, okay, this is where I want to show the difference. I bet this is exactly what they do, and I bet the founders like, what are you even talking about? Like, literally couldn't be more specific about what we do. And this is why I want to point this out. So often, the founder knows what this is. They often have a pitch or they have a summary that doesn't necessarily resonate with the audience. Now, Ed and I have both been doing this for a very long time. Ed has substantial crypto experience. If the two of us who have seen thousands and thousands and thousands of decks say, I don't know what this is, that's a huge problem. Now, does that mean the whole deck is blown up? No. But damn, dude, this was the layup slide, right? Yeah. I mean, and I'm laughing because we all go through this. This was the layup slide. This was like, this one should be so damn obvious that there's no room for error. So my point here is this happens a lot. Ed, how often do we get to the first slide? And I'm like, okay, could have been clearer, could have been simpler. What's a diaspora community?
I don't know, but I will point something out for you, Will, because this is the second version that we were sent. Mm-hmm. And basically, the first version literally said, My Dola helps diaspora families, still don't know what that is, in the U.S. lower remittance costs and access savings and credit solutions using culturally related blockchain-powered financial platform. I understood that a lot more than community savings just because of my background. This is the second version.
Can you translate either of those to me? I have no idea what that means, and I want to know what it means. This isn't me, me being combative. I want to know what it means, and I just don't.
Okay, let's point out what's going on here for everybody who's watching. Is every investor is going to approach things based on their lens. So I have experience investing. 80% of my portfolio was blockchain a few years ago, crypto based, and one of the most painful use cases that could be solved was sending money. And that's immediately, I know the language behind that. Now, I'm just going to say flat out, this is the first version, could have been said a lot more straightforward, but at least I knew what ballpark we were in. And it's just, hey, these families, they immigrate and then they have to send money. And there are entire economies that the GDP is all based on remittance payments. Like, what they
Okay.
take sending money.
I get it now. Okay. So let me parrot this back, but there's no way I would have gotten this without you telling me. One of our colleagues here, Ryan Rutan, just moved from Guatemala recently. When the Trump administration came in, they were making a lot of changes and to immigration, everything else like that. He informed me that a third of Guatemala's GDP is remittance income, primarily from families in America,
Exactly.
back to the country.
Yeah.
And that deporting people, et cetera, and it would fundamentally change the GDP of that company or that country, right? And once you told me that, I started digging into other countries and seeing how big remittance was, and I was like, wow, like that's a huge problem in lever. Once I understand, like again, remittance makes sense in that context if I already had that context. Like lowering remittance cost means the cost that it costs me to send money back to my home country, right? Once you explain it to me, I get it. But the problem with this slide is you're not going to be there to explain it to me.
Okay, we need to pause on this. I can tell you, Will, that I don't know how this second title slide connects to the first one except for the content. So we've really moved several degrees, like an order of magnitude away.
Yeah.
And that's where, just to point out what Will said. So first, diaspora communities, I don't know what that is. Community savings circles, what is that into a modern financial product? I know what a modern financial product is, but no context.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say, everyone, what Will and I just did, and investors never going to do.
Yeah.
I will literally tell you what's going to happen, okay? So say that this founder was a connection to me, a personal connection to me. And I went to my GPs or my investment committee because I don't get to make these decisions on my own.
Right.
I bring it to, we used to have like a regular Monday meeting where we'd go through. I would say, okay, here's what it is. And they would look at this title and they'd say, we don't understand. And if I had to explain it to them, they may have the same reaction that Will had. Oh, now we get it. We understand. It's still a no. We're still not going to look at it. Why? Because the investor automatically knows if you can't explain to us in a way, you're going to have challenges downstream in explaining it to customers. If you don't have everything on lock and buttoned down, that it's a clear message, then future investors, other founders, partners, collaborators is going to be extremely difficult. And they'd still make it a no based on the founder's ability to communicate. Doesn't matter what the idea is.
My title slide would say this: we make it cheap for people to send money back to their home country.
Exactly.
Now, invariably you're going to say, yeah, but blockchain, but AI, but yes, we're going to talk about all that and the rest of the thing. Just give me the simplest caveman explanation that you can come up with. Maybe you go, oh, okay, you're making it cheaper to send money back. Like, that's all I need to know right now. That's it.
Will, overall, this deck, I went through it and I read it. This founder clearly knows what they're talking about, is thoughtful. I'm sure that this is, great founder, like great team that they put together. It ticks all the boxes for the raw material. But Will, I couldn't scan this deck. This would have been a hard pass right away. Yeah. I couldn't scan this deck. It was so dense and I had to dig in, and I'm just getting it right out of the way up front for everyone because we want to get in the solution. It would have been a pass right up front.
Okay, so let's talk about why. And I want to say, what you just said has nothing to do with the quality of the startup. Like, let's assume this startup, and just like to take out this off the table, is a letter grade A, which is the most frustrating because Ed and I will look at a deck and we're like, man, we want this startup to raise so badly. We want this story to get told so badly. And this deck is working against the founder. Here's why it's working against the founder. By the way, it's well designed, it's thoughtful, et cetera. No issues there. It's because we can tell you already, a good deck says so little. It has a couple sentences per slide. It's got 10 to 12 slides, and it is punchy and fast. What we do when we design these decks is we make a huge judgment error as founders. In our minds, if we put more content on there, someone will read it. If we add more bullets, someone will read it. If we make the competitive metrics bigger and denser, someone will read it. If we add a citation, someone will click it. If we add a video, someone will watch it. None of that's true. No one wants to read your deck. No one wants to read your deck. Everyone wants to scan your deck. They want to be able to go through it lightning fast in 5 minutes and get the gist. And here's what I'll say, having gone through countless decks. A good deck that's refined, where the founder spent a lot of time on it, it gets shorter and tighter, not longer and wordier. in every single case. So our goal is to take a lot of words and make them the fewest words possible that make the most impact possible. So your goal is to keep it tight, keep it focused.
As a investor, scout, analyst, if I wanted to present this to other investors, I got to look good. You have to help me help you, make
Yep.
me look good for bringing in real tight decks. But here's another thing, Will. I would sit there and I'd have to scan maybe 12, 15 decks and squeeze it in between everything else.
Yeah.
And all the decks were bad. And so if I encountered another one, the credibility went low. And if it was jam packed with information, and I'm just telling you what went through my mind,
Yeah.
this founder basically crammed their deck with as much as they could to try and impress me. And I don't know what to believe. And I'm
Yeah.
not going to spend the time to reef through it. I will as an advisor. Here's Startups.com. We do that, everyone. But as an
Yeah.
investor, it's like, yep, this could be the diamond in the rough, the one in the million, but I got a million other decks to go through, so I'm not going to do it.
Right. Agreed. We had a comment that says, for an accelerator I just accepted into, I saw by the Linux, they spent 11 seconds on it. Okay, so fun fact, guys. Ed and I looked through, like I said, thousands of decks. I can tell you within 15 seconds of looking at a deck whether it's a well-prepared deck. Now, I'm not saying it's a good company. I can't possibly make that assessment that quickly. There is a common outcome when people spend enough time in their decks and they're well coached with their decks, where they start to look like a deck that's well coached.
Yes.
And what I would say to that, it's kind of like when you drive by a restaurant and a really crappy restaurant in a strip mall has like no awning. It's just like a bad sign over the last sign over the last sign. And you just look at it in 5 seconds, like that's a crappy restaurant. But a really nice restaurant has a beautiful awning, right? They have like great frontage, etc. Somebody put the time into it to make it look that good. You want to be that one. Now, but that good awning, that beautiful frontage, if you will, actually comes with saying less. So Ed, so that we're not talking amorphously, let's dig into this deck. Let's dig into this first problem slide. And I'm going to challenge you and I, Ed, to say whatever they're about to say in a fraction of the word. So you guys will see in real time how we do it.
Here we go. So I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's the headline here. The problem,
Holy
I appreciate.
Cow.
Yeah, it's small.
Oh,
U.S.
damn,
financial systems leave 11 million immigrant and minority families behind. And there are 4 barriers diaspora communities faced with traditional finance. And we got a bunch of paragraphs 1, 2, 3, 4 bullet points: informal financial practice, fragmented financial tools, limited credit access, excessive remittance costs.
Here are all the problems with this. And folks listening, here's what I want you to know. This is a good idea. Like this is a good startup. So this isn't us picking on the startup, but this is a painful slide. And I say this to say, I can tell this was written by somebody that was very smart. I can tell what they're trying to say, but where they missed on this slide wasn't any of that. It wasn't the quality of the startup, the quality of the founder. It was a misread on what the audience is expecting.
Yes.
The misread was that the audience is expecting a dense, high amount of information that if I had to guess, if I look at this closely, I'm going to guess this slide already has a high degree of repetition in it. So here's what we're trying to do. I want to take all of this information and I want to make it one sentence. All of this information and I want to make it one sentence, okay? Now, normally what Ed and I would do, because we're a bunch of cheats and hacks, is we'd copy all of this, we'd paste it into GPT, and we'd say, make this one sentence, okay? But I'm not going to do that. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a stab at this with you, Ed. Okay. And we're going to cherry pick what we think are the elements that would make one sentence. And I'm telling you, for those of you that have never seen this exercise before, this is actually how we do it.
Let me break down what you just said for everybody who's watching. First, Will, I was kind of excited to show this to you because you and I kind of are on the other ends of the spectrum when it comes to blockchain and crypto, right?
Yeah.
But I can tell you that if there's a use case for blockchain, and there are some really big companies solving this, it is the entire thing of cross-border payments, remittances, putting it on different rails and not having to go through the similar financial system. So first, I'm bullish on the use case.
Yeah.
Second, what Will said, everyone, about elements. Typically, this is what we find, is that a deck will have too many elements, but it will have the element that you need to focus everything. It's sometimes like looking through a stack of needles for a needle. Mm-hmm. It's tough, but what Will is going to do is systematically going to break it down. And I just want to encourage all of you, and we'll break it down for you as we go, to look at your own pitch decks and run through the same exercise that Will's going to do and say, would this make my pitch deck better? That's what I think is the benefit of what we're going to do.
Okay, so before we even get into what changes we're going to make, let's open up with the structure that we're going to go for. Two parts to this. We're going to have who's the customer and what's the market size. Ideally, how much dollars are we talking about? So part one is essentially market size, TAM, and part two is where's the highest pain point? What is most broken? So we're going to take all of this and we're going to create one sentence that has these two parts. Now the first part is actually pretty straightforward, but it was missed here. U.S. financial systems leave 11 million immigrant and minority families behind. Okay, cool. But how much money are we talking about? The number of families does not matter if we make our money off the volume of payments. Okay, so in other words, if U.S. financial systems leave $3 trillion in immigrant remittance, unaccounted for or unprocessed, et cetera. That's what we're looking for. Now, for that first part, what we're actually talking about are two components. Who is the customer specifically? In this case, I'm guessing it's the immigrant and minority families. And the second part is what's the total addressable market size? Okay, we have to open up with that. Now, Ed, we're going to cheat a little bit, and we're going to go to the market size slide and see if maybe they have an answer for us. Because if you're not sure how to open this up, I can already tell you the answer is on your market size slide.
Let me just pause for a moment and just state one of the issues that I have right away, everyone, is this is a very subjective opening headline. I do appreciate that we have a number in there. It might not be the right number, but we'll get to that. But saying leaving immigrant families behind, what does that mean? If it's esoteric in that way and abstract, you're going to lose the investor. So I just wanted to comment that.
Yeah, and we just don't need to.
At the same time, I do want to share sort of an encouraging story for this founder. I knew a founder. We advised him, hung out with him, asked him his story. He had exited a company for, I believe, 9 figures, and it was a credit card company. And he just wanted to target immigrant families. He said, when people immigrate here, they can't get access to credit card. They have no financial identity, all those things. So I'm going to give them a credit card. That's what he said. And VCs laughed at him. People laughed at him. He said he went to a meeting, and right after the first problem slide, they started making fun of him while he was still in the room. They just tore him.
Oh, that happened to me.
I tore him apart, Will. This is how mean they were. What happened to you?
So again, same thing. I started one of the first high-risk, low-income credit card systems called Afford It. And this was before, like 10 years before Affirm and like Klarna and everything else like that. And I would go into VCs and I would say, hey, a huge portion of Americans are underbanked and can't get access to basic credit, like 40 million, like way more than you think. And they laughed at me and they said, that's not true. And I said, no, what I want to do is I want to allow people to buy things like hundreds of dollar items using weekly payments because that aligns with how they get paid and they have a lack of access to credit. And they were like, why wouldn't you just put it on a credit card? Anybody can get a credit card. Like you get a high interest credit card, but you can get a credit card.
Yeah.
And now, and again, I grew up with very little means, so I was very familiar with this problem. They were not. They went to Stanford, Harvard, et cetera. They've never had a job that involved a name badge or paid per hour. So they had no idea that like people just didn't have black cards, right? And like I had to explain it to them, and they laughed at me. They said this doesn't exist, and I had to prove to them that there were people that couldn't. I mean, it's bananas, and a lot of them, not like a few.
The moral of the story, everyone: underserved, underrepresented, underestimated communities are all over the place, or populations, problems to solve. And this founder, 9-figure exit, everyone. So I really believe in this, and I'm saying this because I want the founder here to know my heart, our hearts, when doing this. But as per your request, Will, let's look at the market opportunity. 1.4 trillion global remittance market, 150 billion diaspora communities, 12 billion South Florida diaspora. I still don't know. Can someone in the chat just tell me what a diaspora is? I'm going to look it up right now just because.
I thought it was variance, like a community of a high degree of variance, but I could be wrong on that.
It is a diasporic community refers to a group of people who share a common origin, culture, heritage, but who live in a variety of different locations.
Oh, okay. Well,
far from their homeland.
1.4 trillion. I'm guessing that's how much money is being sent through the remittance market.
Yes.
Okay. So what I would say, and obviously I don't know what ROSCA is. Do you?
Nope.
Okay. Never, ever, ever, ever use acronyms. Ever use acronyms in your pitch deck for exactly that reason. Now, none of us knows what that means. Doesn't matter. But right now, if we were to say that, well, let me say this. If I really believe that I'm going after a global opportunity, being 1.4 trillion, then I might use that. However, my concern here, Ed, is that the true demo they're going after, the demographic that they're going after, may not include all of these people.
Sure.
In other words, I could be wrong about this. This is where the founder would tell us otherwise. But whenever I see a number that a total addressable market that's over $1 trillion, I always get anxious because in almost every case, I've seen a case where it's once you get to $1 trillion, you're almost always including people that aren't actually part of your market. But I could be wrong.
Yes. Will, let me just reaffirm your point there. I use global remittance all the time. I send money back to Korea. That's where my family is. This doesn't bother me. I don't mind paying the fees. I just fully accept I'm going to pay these fees. And that's precisely explaining to everyone out there, Will, what you said.
Yeah.
If you have a total addressable market and it's big and you have not justified it with an ICP, ideal customer profile, and it's just everybody who breathes oxygen,
Yeah.
then it's not going to make sense for the investor. It's going to be working against you for sure.
For this one, and I think this is important for folks in the audience to hear this, because the 1.4 trillion is almost too big. I might actually start off with 150 billion, right?
Yeah.
Just because it's such a big market at 150 billion, you just don't need to make it 10x bigger than that. And here's why: as you make the market bigger, as you increase, kind of the aperture of your market size, you make it geometrically harder to capture and dominate that market. So there's a balance here. I want my market size to be big enough that I have tons of room to run and grow, but small enough that I don't get swallowed up in an oversized market. The likelihood that I'm going to be meaningful in a $1.4 trillion market anytime soon or perhaps ever is fairly low. Now, all that said, for those of you watching this and saying, well, what should my market size be? Ed, the answer I usually give is this. Once you get over $1 billion in total addressable market, it's not that you're done here. It's that you're usually on the right side of that question, right? Now, if you get to 5, 10, et cetera, great, but you don't need to get to 150 billion. Now, if that's what the market is, that's what the market is. But what I'm saying here is I would likely, if you and I were founders in this business, I'd say, Ed, that's such a big but focused market. Let's go there. Let's make that our total addressable market initially and focus on the problems of US-based folks having this issue. It's a big market. It's a focused market. It's one we can easily understand. We start including folks from all other countries. We've got all other kind of cultural issues. We've got regulatory issues. It'd be a lot easier to focus on this one big juicy market. What are your thoughts?
Well, everything you said, I'm going to make even more complicated. And this is thanks to our chat. I'm going to convolute, but I'm bringing it up for a certain point because I'm intrigued. ROSCA stands for Rotating Savings and Credit Association. This is from one of our members here. Is a system where a group of people regularly pool money together and take turns withdrawing the accumulated funds. Will, so first question, Will, have you ever heard of this before?
I have not. Ed, you and I see so many companies. Just to give people a sense for this, we don't look at every single person, but we have 25,000 companies a month that come to us. So we see a lot of stuff. And I'm not saying we've seen everything. We clearly haven't seen this, but I'm just saying generally, and we've been doing this for a long time. I'm in my 32nd year. You accumulate like a lot of like knowledge with all of this. And every week, which is what's cool about our job, I get to see something new I've never seen, but I'm shocked I've never seen that.
Well, Will, I can tell you. So my family immigrated and they did do this informally. And Nakia said, okay, so Nakia, she's also a minority background family.
Yeah.
She calls it susu in some cultures. In Korean, it was called ge. What's fascinating is ROSCA. I didn't know there was an actual formal thing. So there must be structures. There must be some type of institution that does this because my family did rely on this when we were young. Here's the issue. I bring it up because it's intriguing, because if this is a new way to do that and there are like millions of people that use this, the problem is we go all the way back to the cover, even the problem. We never even mentioned this at all. I see remittance costs, limited financial tools, and I'm just kind of roping us back in to focus this. Will, one of the things that is an issue with this slide, and I tell this founder, pick one of these to start, because to me, I read this, I don't know if you see the same thing. They all seem like 4 separate problems, business models, everything, right?
This is where we're going to go next. So here's what I would like to open up the first part of this problem statement. This is critical. I want to open it up with who has this problem and how much money is on the table. I may say in the U.S., immigrant and minority families remit $150 billion per year, and pause there. In the US, because again, I always open up with triangulating who this customer is. In the US, immigrant and minority families, $150 billion per year. I'm going to, again, pause that as part one. What I just did there is I told the investor so much of what they need to know. I told
Yes.
them who my customer is. I told
Perfect.
them where my geography was, US, and I told them how much money is on the table, which was a preview to what the TAM in my mind should be. I want to start there by saying, as an investor, you just did me such a favor. I know immediately who the customer is, which could help me understand if I'm in the right market, if we're talking healthcare versus B2B SaaS. Most importantly, you just told me there's $150 billion on the table. And now I'm going, before you even tell me what the full problem is, I like this 150 billion. Now people get misled on that. They're like, well, hey, if I could tell them it's 150 billion, wouldn't they like it even more if it's 300 billion? No, that's not the way this works at all. The biggest number isn't the best number. The most focused number is the best number. Okay.
Ooh,
You just
nice.
saw that.
Nice.
150 billion is a focused US problem, okay, which would help us wrap our arms around customer acquisition, focusing on the customer, help us wrap it around regulatory, et cetera. As we open that aperture up to 1.4 trillion, now we have to be in every market, right? That's bananas. And I understand we'll get there over time. But what I'm saying is you've already got a home run in your backyard at 150 billion. Stay there for now. We can always make it bigger. But the problem is so big locally, if you're based in the US, you just don't need to make it bigger. And even 150 billion, it is financial services, so the numbers are disproportionately big. Even 150 billion is a pretty damn big number. You could build a public company and never have gone any further than that and be just fine. So now the next thing, and folks, I want you to lean in on this part because this is probably the most important slide in your deck. And this is where we get thrown off the most. This company likely has, let's call it, a dozen things that they do well, a few of which are going to be opened up here around the informal financial practices, the fragmented tools, the limited credit access, and the excessive remittance cost. Awesome. The first thing that we do is we take everything we think we're going to be great at doing, and we list them on a whiteboard, on your computer, whatever, right? And then we stack rank them, starting with which one is by far the most critical, and then moving down. We rank 1 through 10, whatever it's going to be. We rank all of them. The reason we do this is because it forces us as a team, sometimes we've never had this conversation, to start to say, what is the most important thing? Generally speaking, this really starts to open up a lot of doors here. Generally speaking, number 1 and number 2, if we're not the best at that, if we don't nail those, 3, 4, 5, and 10 aren't going to make a lick of difference.
Exactly.
See, the thing here is it's not trying to get as many things as possible. It's about getting as few things as possible, think focus, that matter the most. Now, that doesn't mean this other stuff we never talk about. That doesn't mean 3 through 10, for example, we never talk about. We just don't try to shoehorn all of that into this one sentence.
Let me append to what you just said.
Yeah.
Because Will, I really liked how you couched the last piece of feedback and saying you just did the investor a huge favor.
Yep.
Let me explain to everyone how you're doing the investor a favor. This company wants to raise $500,000. I think to myself, financial services, $500,000, you are not going to get very far if you're trying to do 12 things. Step 1. So now you're giving me security and comfort that you know how to spend my money. You need to prioritize. Second is the thought that goes into it. As an investor, I know eventually for you to grow into a unicorn company, you're going to have to diversify your services. Recently, Airbnb just got into experiences. It's no longer about renting rooms. They're expanding. I don't want you to tell me all those things and how you worked it out and lose the focus. I want those to be, yes, this is a grand vision, but now you are showing me that as a founder, you can properly implement the proper story that reveals the right strategy to put a beachhead foothold, start dominating so that I'm not going to lose my money by being diluted all over your startup right from the jump.
If I were to say, I want to sell you a BMW, okay? Now, with my BMW, this is a metaphor for your pitch deck and your offer, for your solution. If my BMW has 10 things that I think people buy it for, I'm going to force myself to rank the most important thing and the least important thing, right? Let's say that we found that the most important thing was exclusivity. Like the fact that not everybody can have one. It's not a Honda. Is exclusivity. The second most important thing, let's say, I'm just making this up, was that it was the most beautiful ride, the most comfortable ride you could possibly have. Okay. Now, after that, we've got sweet stereo, heated seats, cruise control, all these other things. If you don't care as a customer about 1 or 2, the rest don't matter. No one's like, oh, I don't want an exclusive car that rides great, but God, I have to have heated seats, so I'm going to buy it anyway, right? The stuff at the bottom that doesn't make the top 1, 2, or 3 aren't important because the top 1, 2, or 3 are why people buy the product. All the extra stuff only gets entered into the equation if you've already agreed that the top 1, 2, or 3 are the most important things.
Hey, for those of you in the audience, I see you. I've seen your pitch decks. You need to do this exercise because I know you're trying to boil the ocean with all these problems, but I just want to give a shout out. There's a founder in the audience, Will. I'm hoping you get to meet this individual. They're working in the creator economy and they're just doing one thing. Well, I hope they just do one thing because there's so many solutions for helping creators make money. But this solution was we do one thing. we help creators do live meetings where people show up in person. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you, I referred this creator. I sent their website. Why? Because I knew of a client who was looking for that one solution
Yeah.
for that thing. And so everyone, what Will is saying is absolute gold, not just for investors, but for customers, as he talked about.
Yeah.
Let's keep going, Will. Bring it all
Okay,
together.
so
Land this
so
plane.
we're gonna apply this. We're just gonna take just to make things simple and keep things moving. We're gonna apply the four categories we've got: informal financial practices, financial tools, credit access, remittance costs. Ed, given your experience with this with this product, which one would you rank first? What do
The
you think is
first
the
one,
most important part?
remittance costs.
Okay, why?
Because as I look all the other ones, all of them have been done to death. Like you've got too much competition, access to credit. We just talked about Start, the exit at 9 figures,
Yeah.
giving access to credit. The remittance cost, this is currently the most painful problem, and it hasn't been solved. It has not been solved yet. And to me, this one, as an investor, gets me excited. All these other ones, I'm like, been there, done that.
Okay, I'm with you. So let's move excessive remittance costs. Just throw a number one on that one. I'm going to immediately put my number four, which is fragmented financial tools, and it has nothing to do with this particular use case around fragmented financial tools. And here's why. Here's my submission there. I think fragmentation almost always fails as a problem statement. It almost always fails as a problem statement. And I see this all the time. Like customers have to use lots of tools, but we provide one. I rarely see a case where a company is badass because they've taken lots of tools and moved it into one. I'm not saying it's never happened. I'm saying fragmentation consistently is an incredibly hard thing to prove that it's an actual problem.
Yeah.
It's the thing that's saying, does it exist? Yes. But is the problem strong enough to have people get off of all of those individual solutions onto yours? Very hard to quantify.
Now that I read this further, number two for me is
Yep.
the first one. Why?
Yep.
Because this is the most intriguing for me that
Yep.
there's offline savings, informal, and we just talked about it. Susu is in there. And so I'm like, interesting. The problem though, before I go too deep, I see this and this as two very separate businesses. How do you deal with that?
I could say we do one while doing the other. I think
Okay.
we could formalize their saving practices while lowering their remittance costs.
But let me make this argument, Will. And
Mhm.
everyone, this is the fun part. Actually, this is what I really enjoy about these pitch deck reviews.
Yeah.
Will, if I came to you and I said there are $150 billion spent by immigrant families in remittances and they're being raked over the coals and this is painful, right? Or if I said, let's say, same number, I said, Will, there's like, $100 billion of money that's transacted informally in these Susu circles or these informal circles. And it's not regulated, it's not safe, anything like that. To me, that's another separate compelling problem. How would you read that?
I really like the way you're framing this.
Yeah.
I think this reminds me of Stripe. Remember, Stripe was just like everyone's being raked over the coals with credit card processing fees.
Right.
We're at 2.9%, and everybody can go F themselves, right? And,
Yeah.
and everyone was like, yeah, that's the problem. And I remember at the time when Stripe came out, there's two things that they did incredibly well. Number one, they brought the processing cost down geometrically compared to what it was on other providers. And the second thing that they did is I remember they're like, and it's 2 lines of code.
Yeah.
Or whatever it was. It was
crazy.
Freakishly, yeah, it was freakishly easy to use.
Yep.
And I remember working with all of these commerce providers for decades, and it was a nightmare. They sucked, right? And Stripe's value proposition was so clear and so easy. Now, Stripe would go on to do lots of other stuff. Doesn't matter whatsoever, right? The reason Stripe exists is because of 2 lines of code and 2.9%, right? They had the top 2 things that they did better than anybody, and the rest they could get to when they get to. So I'm with you. I think if you could cut remittance costs by 50%, I think that alone could be such a powerful story. And you can say, and then on a separate slide, we can say a product roadmap. Hear me out. Product roadmap is where you get to talk about your other stuff. You're saying, hey, we're gonna do some damage initially by lowering remittance costs. But once we start doing that and we start bringing customers into our fold, here are the other things we can start solving along the way. We can also then solve for credit-related issues. We can help formalize these communities because we have lots of these people using the system because they're saving money. Again, this presents it almost as it all has to be solved at once.
Right.
Instead of saying this has to be solved, this remittance thing, and then we can pull people into a more integrated system.
Okay, this has been a masterclass in problem statement. So let's bring it all together, Will. So if we took number 4, let's say that's the primary problem, $150 billion in remittances, how would you wordsmith this all together in that one sentence?
I would say U.S. immigrants and minority families spend over $150 billion a year on remitting funds back to their home countries. Typically, lose between $60 to $90 for every $1,000 sent.
Where did you get that number? Down here? Right?
Bottom right. Now, here's why I use that. When I say traditional providers charge between 6 to 9%, how would anybody know if that's a good or bad number? Like you would have to understand all the eccentricities and details of
Right.
why and how traditional providers need to charge that in order to understand why that's a bad deal. There's no way you're going to communicate any of that, but I definitely understand that if people lose $60 to $90 on every $1,000, that's a ton of dough.
Okay, well, what if we did this? And there are many ways that we can do this. What if we took the number of remittance transactions and we talked about the number of that, and then we figured out and extrapolated it, and we times it by, let's just use an average number of $75. And we just said all these families lose however many billions of dollars in fees that they shouldn't have to pay, that
Yep.
they can't afford to pay. That would have been total market too.
I love that. I love that. Even more streamlined. Now, I want to zoom out for all the folks that are watching now or will watch later. We just took an incredibly dense slide that was written by somebody with a great product that are clearly very smart, distilled it down to a single sentence. Now, you may look at that, the founder may look at that and go, screw you guys, right? Like, you totally missed the point. I really need to change this. Awesome, please do. Right? We're not saying this is the final answer. We're giving you the tools. We're helping shape this clay, if you will, to make the perfect statue, right? To make art out of it. We're giving you the tools to say, oh, this is how I get rid of the less important stuff. Because here's the thing. There's two things that you need to nail on every slide. Number one, people have to remember it. A giant wall of text, ain't nobody going to remember that. Nobody's going to ever remember that, okay? The second thing is you have to make sure what they do remember is only the most important pieces. This is your best of mixtape, okay? So everything you add on this slide that where you're trying to say more and say more and say more, you're actually creating dead weight on the stuff that's most important. Every word is your enemy. Every additional word is your enemy on every slide in a pitch deck. Your job is to do the Occam's razor, where you slice off everything you possibly can until only the best part is left.
So valuable. I really hope founders understand what just happened here. But let's just do one more exercise. We'll land this plane. You've created the beginnings of a great problem statement, Streamline. So let's just say we say X amount of immigrants or X amount of transactions cost billions of dollars in fees that, these families have because of one thing or another, just figuring it out. And it's a painful problem. So now we look at the solution. One thing I want to talk about, does the solution fit the problem? I don't want to jump into it, but we can just firmly say, great, how does smart payouts, fraud prevention, full transparency, insurance loops, if we're saying the problem is expensive fees, you said already, Will, if you could say we cut those fees in half, then we've got legs on this. Walk us through how the two have to connect.
Everything in that solution slide has nothing to do with the problem. Now, if you're the founder, like, what are you guys even talking about? Of course it does. But I want you to understand what this looks like with fresh eyes, okay? First off, Wealth Loop, AI-powered, let's call them Roscas, right? You never told the audience what a Rosca is. Or if you did in the previous slide in the bottom left, then I don't know if you called it a Rosca, did you? There's so much text I can't remember. Yeah, dude, you never told me what a Rosca is, but now you're saying you're an AI-powered Rosca. Okay, happens all the time. No big deal. Let's go back to the solution. AI uses trust scores, community vouching, and financial insights to set a payout order. Where did we say that was the problem? Where did we say we need trust scoring? That trust scoring is the problem. Now, we might have said it in credit access. I can't really remember, but there's so much content I can't remember. Fraud prevention, AI monitors for suspicious activity. Where did we say in the problem statement that fraud prevention was what needed to be solved? Well, transparency, real-time AI tracking of contributions. When did we say that transparency was an issue? Insured loops, pending partnership with TrueStage for contribution protection. When did we say that insurance was a problem? We just said, here are all the solutions to a problem we never told you we had. This is wildly disconnected. Now, again, it's probably all true. It's probably all awesome, in fact. But it literally has nothing to do with the problem we just set up.
It has nothing to do with remittances. And Will, I'm just going to take a stab here and go all the way back to this is actually really intriguing for me. And again, investors will never do this, but we're advisors. We want you to succeed. Will, again, going back, if I told you that there are like $100 billion transacted through these informal Roscas or Roscas because there's fraud and the money's not insured. And then after I said the solution is we have developed an AI-powered Rosca application that has fraud prevention because of full transparency and lets you have insurance so these Roscas don't lose all that money. Bang, problem solution. As someone pointed out in the chat, not an apples to apples problem solution here. That's how one way that I would make it this an apples to apples problem to solution.
Okay, so let's do a few more. When we say that hey, the whole deal is the problem is remittance costs are too high. Here's what I'm going to say on the solution slide. I'm
Perfect.
going to say we cut remittance costs by half because we help address fraud, we help address insurance, and whatever the third one is. Okay. And what you're saying is the reason that these rates are so high is because the administration layer, the cost, the operating expense of servicing this creates a 6 to 9% or whatever it was fee. It's the same thing that Stripe said. Stripe said, look, the reason all these providers are so high is because they have a bunch of bullshit legacy costs. We're
Yes.
going to come in and we're going to remove all those legacy costs. Like, we're basically not going to have them to begin with. And so we're going to be able to do it cheaper. The solution has to be able to say, we can do it cheaper. We can do it for half the cost or whatever it comes out to, for half the cost because we're solving for these three legacy problems. Now, if you wanted to get nitpicky, you could say in the problem statement, the reason remittance is so high is because fraud and insurance and something else is a problem. Then in the solution statement, say we cut remittance by 50% because we address fraud, insurance, and whatever else in a different way.
That's a great angle as well, which may or not be true. Only the founder is going to be able to know. Well, this is, like I said, been a masterclass. It's fantastic. So let's summarize for this founder. They're a new member, so we want to
Yeah,
welcome them.
welcome.
What's your takeaway in terms of, hey, founder, this is what I want you to work on next? And we want to take a look at this next version of the pitch deck.
A couple things. Number one, this is an awesome start. I mean, to be fair, like you gave us a ton of raw clay to work with. Like yes, we're trying to make it tighter and more focused, but it's not a criticism of the business nor the founder. Again, what we keep saying is it's actually a really cool business. What we're saying is awesome. Now let's tell this thing super tight, super focused, so that no one gets lost. Like the trip ups that Ed and I had at the beginning. Let's just take all those off the table. Let's just get this thing super, super, super focused. So what I would say with the deck is awesome start. Awesome start. Let's take it through the process.
My advice would be I'm invested in companies that are trying to do remittance payments, right? And I'm doing pretty well on them.
Yeah.
That's what stable coins, like the market understands. It hasn't been solved yet. But the Rosca component, that's new and novel for me.
Yeah.
I would encourage you to at least give it a good schwack and explore. Maybe that's the angle that you want to take. Well, this has been fantastic. What's your final encouragement? What's our send off to everybody who's been watching this?
For everybody that just saw that, just watched what happened, this is the process. There is no other version where you just like drop in and you're like, oh my God, it's exactly what it should be. I've seen that never in 32 years. Okay. And that's not because I'm trying to find problems. It's because I want decks to be awesome. So if you're going through this process and you're like, oh my God, I got to rip it all up and do it over again, awesome. You're on attempt 1 of 100. Okay. This is a ton of tiny changes. Just be okay getting 1% better each time, and we'll get you there.
Everyone, you are never going to get outside of this format. Me and Will sitting on the same pitch deck, working it through. This is the only time we do this.
Yeah.
If you want that done for your pitch decks, everyone just let us know. Send in your deck.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're happy to do it. Share this with someone that would like to learn. Maybe they're experiencing the same thing. Check out startups.com. Do the YouTube thing. Like, comment, subscribe. Will, always a pleasure. I'll see you next week.